This is a part of YaYa. YaYa is a platform to connect busy women with the community, connections, and coaching they need to survive and thrive personally and professionally. This series, Siqi, is very personal to me because I need community connections and coaching to figure out motherhood, particularly while starting and growing a business, something that you have a lot of personal experience with. First, can you tell us about your company, HelloAva, before we get into Maxwell, who I want to meet, who I see in the video?
Yeah, he's always trying to jump into my Zoom calls. And sometimes I let him, sometimes I'd be like, no, this one you can't. But yeah, so just a little bit background about myself. I'm the CEO and co-founder of HelloAva, which is a company that I first started brainstorming the inception of back in business school when, you know, Jackie and I had a lot of wonderful times together traveling around the world. Obviously, it has evolved a lot, but the idea is to personalize one's skincare journey. And skincare journey is not like a one-time purchase. So you actually, as your life changes and you age, or as you go through different phases like pregnancy or postpartum, your skin changes as well. So we want to be your trusted advisor that helps you throughout this life journey to help you find the best products for yourself. Everyone's skin is different. Everyone deserves that tailored. Oh my gosh, he just broke my mouse. Everyone deserves that tailored skincare advice and tailored product recommendations. So we function as both as a platform ourselves, but also bigger ambitions as an API that plugs into different retailers.
Well, Siqi, not everyone may know how technical your background actually is, just having been a mentor for engineers at Stanford. And you've also been an analyst, an investor, a news anchor, really cool. But I do want to say you are a woman in tech. This is powered by AI and machine learning. I also just want to mention that I personally have benefited from skincare as a self-care strategy during the pandemic. Like, it feels like something in the morning and the evenings that I do for myself and makes me feel good, like I'm investing in me. And so I'm curious, has the pandemic been hard for HelloAva, or has it gotten more people, more women to think about skincare since they're home all the time and want to look good on Zoom?
Great question. Oh, okay, now you have to go because now you're just trying to break my Zoom. Basically, I just want to kind of highlight this little guy a little because he's been trying so hard to get into this camera. I think he wants to spotlight. But so HelloAva actually has grown record year last year, partially because we launched a couple of like the big features that allows this interpersonal connections. That's promoting humane and intimacy between especially women. So before, like, the way it works is that you go through a brief assessment about your skin, you upload a photo, and then you get connected to a network esthetician who is a licensed expert to be able to help you based on your result and also based on what's the AI recommended set of products. We realized during pandemic that just the text message consultation between the customer and the consultant is not quite enough anymore because people are bored at home or quarantined, and we wanted to be able to see people, but we're locked down, right? So we launched a video consult, which basically is also trying to ride on this whole wave of video shopping and all these live streaming platforms, just so that we can promote that intimacy and that strong interpersonal connection between the estheticians on our platform and also the young women or moms out there that's in our client group. And we saw a huge surge in the needs for our platform. And then, so that's on the consumer side. And on the B2B side of the business, because of the pandemic, people strive for these kind of experience and connections even more. So Unilever reached out to us asking, see if we can build a similar experience for their platform, which we did. And that has gotten just huge amount of inbound. So now a lot of the brands that we currently already work with, they saw what we built with Unilever. They were like, oh, this is cool. And this helps with conversion. You bring a personalization experience that helps with stickiness. And I want that too. How can you build that? So one of the bigger ambition we have this year is to make our product not only available on our own site, but also makes this into an API solution that allows basically in the form of a widget that allows brand partners to be able to plug in so that they can offer a personalization experience to their end consumer as well.
That's amazing. Well, I want to note for anyone watching, Siqi became a mom a year ago. So you had a few years of running HelloAva pre-mom and then post-mom. And I'm curious, what was hard at first? What was hard about just being a female founder, starting HelloAva pre-mom? And then we'll get into the motherhood chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question. So pre-mom, I would say, yeah, there's only just, it's very single dimensional in my life. It's just work. And I mean, I have, obviously I've been married since I graduated from business school. So it's either just work and husband, and that's kind of it, you know, and the husband doesn't take much maintenance, right? Like, I mean, obviously you want to, you know, you want to have a good relationship, but it's not as high maintenance as a kid, obviously. So we have a pretty good relationship. My husband and I have we're very supportive of each other. We're very complimentary to each other, and he helps me with the things that I'm not very good at. For example, how to like make, you know, aggressive decisions about business. We're both like from finance, so I can, but I think he's better at, you know, spreadsheet than me. So like, you know, we help each other out, and I help him with things like, you know, communication, like, you know, convincing people, and all these more soft skills. So we're a great partnership, but it's very one-dimensional. It's all about my ambition, and then let's go for it. And then you're the ambition, and let's go for this ambition as a family together. Now that I have Maxwell, it's very different from it's the opposite of one-dimensional. It's multi-dimensional in a way that's sometimes like you're trying to, it's like a lot of times, a lot of things becomes a little bit of trade-off. Wait, you cannot eat the battery. Oh my God, he's trying to eat the battery.
This is real life. This is what it really means to be a founder mom.
All right. Now you have to go play with Nanny. Bye bye.
Oh, Maxwell, it was so good to meet you.
Okay. Yeah, this is real life broadcast. This is me live streaming from my living room. But anyway, let me go back to postpartum. So postpartum, obviously there's multi-dimensional. It's the opposite of one-dimensional. You have to focus a lot about recovery of your body. You have to focus on your kid and how to, now becomes like how to raise him as well, and how to inspire him, not just, you know, giving him the food to make sure that he is well fed. Also how to, like, and then also your relationship with your husband changes as well, because you're two like big adults, like trying to take real responsibility, not just yourself anymore. And like sometimes like it sounds like, I never understand what that means until I become a parent. I'm like, wow, this is like, I still feel like I'm a kid myself, but I also like, I need to take care of him. So yeah, so that was like a pretty big mental transition to me. And then obviously you have to run your business, and that's also a big responsibility, because I have to, you know, we have to take care of the team. I have to pay employees, right? There's a lot of responsibility. If I don't pay them, if I don't keep company running well, some of these people might lose their job, or they might not have, like, you know, and next step. So it's a really scary thought sometimes to kind of have to feel like you have so much responsibility. Oh, and then on top of that, you also have to focus on your own health, like especially during pandemic, you realize how important that is. So for a mom that just came out of delivery, right? Like I was lucky enough, I didn't have to go through a C-section, but if I did, like that's a long recovering period. So there's a lot of aspect all of a sudden that just came into the equation that I need to kind of allocate time and resources to worry about, that I never even thought about before that. So it was definitely like requires a much better skill set of being able to multitask and be able to learn to juggle through different things, and also just be okay with things not being perfect.
That's one thing, Siqi, I keep hearing is women who feel like they're failing in all aspects of their life. So for example, you have to take care of your company, your kid, your husband. How, first of all, how do you take care of yourself? What are some strategies you do for your own self-care? And then also just what are some of your productivity hacks? Like what's the daily survival like for Siqi?
So prenatal time, I would say definitely, I think one thing that has helped me a lot is exercise regularly, but with low impact stuff. So like bar exercise. I mean, this is pre-pandemic, so I went to like these bar studios all the time, and that was actually really helpful. And then also I did a lot of, I had this amazing woman who specializes in chiropractic, but who is a chiropractor, but she specializes in chiropractic that helps you open your pelvic floor, which could help your deliveries faster and smoother. And on top of that, I also took a class called hypnobirthing, which I cannot recommend enough. It's basically using hypnosis to help with birth, which is, I know it sounds a little mysterious, but really what it is, it's very similar to meditation, but it's more focused on the delivery process. And it's basically telling you how to put yourself in a peace of mind that allows your body to open rather than close. Because a lot of these pain when you're giving birth, it comes from fear. So so it's mental, because you don't know what you don't know, and that's what's fearful about it. So we are, I think, like when I was taking this class, I was kind of more curious about what is this toolkit, since a lot of these celebrities like Gwyneth Paltrow, like Jessica Alba, like these promoting, natural living type of celebrities are very big on hypnobirthing, and they all did it without pain medication. So when I did all these things to kind of help my own body, to take care of myself, I think it was really helpful. And when I was giving birth, I mean, it was a pretty crazy experience. I ended up going to the hospital. I mean, my doctor was telling me on the phone with me, telling me to try to labor a little longer at home because that's what's advised, which I did. And she also knows that I had like trainings about hypnobirthing going into this. So she was suggesting that if I can labor a little longer at home, it will help this process like smoother. So I did that. And when I got to the hospital, I kind of did a little bit too much almost, because I was trying to, be in a more calm state of mind. When I got to the hospital, when they tested me, they were like, wow, this is crazy. You were fully dilated. You're 10 centimeters dilated. So I was in quite a lot of pain already at this point. I felt like even these hypnobirthing techniques couldn't, it wasn't enough for me to mentally like forget about the pain. And then at this point, I was like, I think I need epidural. And then when they tested me, they were like, oh, you're fully dilated. It's time to push. And I had no idea what that means. I was like what? And so they were like, no, like your baby's crowning, you're almost there. Like you don't have time for epidural. So I end up like pushing him out just like that. And honestly, not intentional. Like I didn't take hypnobirthing trying to avoid medication. I tried to avoid pain medication, but it just happened to be some of these things, some of these impact it's making that's subconscious. And that's something I really want to kind of emphasize today, is that a lot of these changes or these things that you do to take care of your own body is subconscious change that is in a very positive way that helps you cope with things like stronger and better. So these changes like happen subconsciously. So I had no idea, right? I just kind of try to use some of these breathing techniques that I learned from hypnobirthing class or meditation skills. And it just has so happened to be, I think that allows my body to open up in a way that doesn't close it. So when I was giving birth, like it was really fast. I think I got to hospital 15 minutes later, he was already there. And I think that's also a reason why, and obviously I went through a lot of pain because I didn't have pain medication, but on hindsight, I think those are some of the things that we can do to like kind of take good care of ourselves, right? And then afterwards, during postpartum, because I didn't have the pain med, also it helps me recover faster as a new mom. And so that got me kind of a higher energy level to kind of go back to work again and building the company again, growing it. Yeah, so I think a lot of these things are intertwined in a way. If you can find good skill or good like strategies or good classes you can take to help you have a strong mind, I think then it will help so many things. Like, and sometimes you don't realize, because when I took hypnobirthing, I didn't know. I never think that I'm actually going to use it to avoid pain medication, and that wasn't my goal. But when I actually did it, I realized like subconsciously it did make these positive change that allows me to have the toolkits to deal with pain, stress, anxiety, and maybe a lot of things that I experience today, even a year after birth. I'm probably using some of these techniques subconsciously to cope with pain and anxiety that's from work. Yeah.
Siqi, oh my God, I have to recap so much of this. So first of all, one of my favorite questions usually is how much of motherhood can you prepare for versus learn on the job? And so I just want to reiterate for people watching, like you said, there are classes that are really helpful, like hypnobirthing for you, like seeing a pelvic floor therapist or chiropractor.
Chiropractor, yeah.
That's awesome. And then
and then for those new moms or pregnant mom like yourself, right? Definitely start drinking raspberry leaf tea and take evening primrose oil pills around 36 weeks.
I love it. I love it. I love just being told things to do. I want to get the A on the test, and I know there's no A anymore, but like I'm like, yeah, I can do that.
These are very easy to do things. Like you literally go to Whole Foods and buy raspberry leaf tea, but it helps with opening and softening your cervix, so that makes your delivery process easier. And this is all kind of like very mild stuff. It's not medicine or anything, right? But it helps in a way that is more kind of on the supplement side of things.
And what's the primrose oil?
Evening primrose oil.
Oh my gosh. Everybody, just to remind you, Siqi is the CEO and founder of a beauty company and a healthcare company and skincare company, so she knows these things.
I'm not. I mean, I'm more like on the skincare, so I don't do like teas and Chinese medicine, right? But these are things that my hypnobirthing teacher told me, and I did it, and it seems to help. So I would say it doesn't hurt to try.
The other thing you mentioned is how all this prep and work of becoming a mom has made you a stronger CEO, which I think is an important narrative for us to share with the world, which is it's not just an uphill battle. It is an uphill battle, of course, being a woman founder, also being a mompreneur, as they say, a mom entrepreneur. There are advantages and strengths. And so I love that all the mental work you did to prep has strengthened your mindfulness. I'm also curious, I think about mental regulation. I think of emotional regulation as sometimes different. Like my mind is definitely like my thoughts, my anxiety, being present, but emotions too can be overwhelming. I'm just curious, how do you think about your emotional regulation as a mom and as a CEO?
Yeah, I think being a mom has definitely kind of given me a very different kind of perspective. Like I think in the past, if I get like emotional or I get angry, I don't really think about what is the consequence of this if I like criticize. I'm trying already. I felt like I've gone through the whole touchy-feely training from business school, right, at Stanford. So we, you and I both kind of know a toolkits of how to convey constructive feedback in a way that is very easy to accept. So then you're not offending people when you're giving a criticism or giving some kind of negative feedback. But once you become a mother, I think that level of cautiousness and that level of understanding is even one more step ahead, because you are you always think about when you're trying to give people negative feedback, you always kind of look back. You're like, how would I tell this to my own kid, right? Like, would this make my own kid defensive about it, or how would it land it on my children, right? Like, if this is something that you don't want to tell your kids about, then maybe you also shouldn't say it to your employees, or sometimes vice versa. Like, I mean, maybe with your own kid, it's slightly easier because you're like, if you're like need to yell at him, you kind of just yell at him. Whereas if you with your employees, you're probably like, oh, I cannot ever yell at people, right? That's like no. But how can I deliver the feedback in a way that's not going to make other people defensive about it? But sometimes it's that kind of interpersonal dynamic is somewhat reminding of each other. So you try to kind of use a mirror almost to yourself, and you're like, would I say this ever to my employer, or would I ever say this to my kid? So then you kind of measure the the effectiveness of those statements that you're trying to make, and you kind of have a second thought about it before you do it. So you're like a little more cautious about everything you do because you have this extra perspective as a new parent. Like I think that's really valuable. So I think it actually makes me a better leader, because now I not only have to lead my company, I also have to lead by an example in my own family, because my kid is going to follow whatever I do, right? So I think sometimes that gives you a higher level of, supervision on yourself, basically.
Amazing. Another advantage of being a mom, and you're calling it caution. It's also really empathy. Like, you are more empathetic, and it makes you a better communicator, which I love. One question I have, as you think about kind of your family and the postpartum recovery, did you feel pressure being a leader in femtech, as I would call it? You're a woman in tech, you have a company, a skincare company. Did you feel pressure about when to come back to work? And I'll say that I'm speaking vulnerably here. I, on one hand, want to just be very self-compassionate and just feel it out. On the other hand, like, I love work. I love it. I love what I'm doing. I love being a problem solver. And I love waking up thinking about work. I love work, YaYa, women connection, coaching, community. So I'm almost a little worried about being judged if I start working too soon. I feel like, there's like, you get judged either way, like come back to work, or you didn't stay on maternity leave enough. So how did you think about it for yourself?
Yeah. No, this is a really, really wonderful question. So I was on a mom panel, I think a couple months ago, actually, with some of fellow portfolio companies from this venture fund called SoGal Ventures. And it was actually really interesting because some of the moms on that panel, they basically said that, and this includes one pretty big company. I think she was like a Series B founder already. And she was saying that, I didn't take one day of maternity. I went straight to work. And I was just like, what? Well, like, I was like, obviously I admire her so much, but at the same time I felt like I'm so guilty. Oh my gosh, like, did I do like something bad for my company? And then, so that's one side of the spectrum, but then there's obviously another side of the spectrum, which is, I took all the time I have, and therefore, like, but usually that applies a little less so to founders, because if you are like one of the founders, if you're an early stage company, like, unless you're like a public traded company, that's very different. But if you're a founder and you're an early stage company, that's like pre-Series B type of company, I think it's very hard for you to take anything that's more than like 3 or 4 months, right? So, which is it's kind of the norm for maternity leave in the US. So I think my 1 cent is like, my 2 cents is that maybe 1 cent, because it's actually not 2 cents, because I feel like my experience doesn't really apply to everyone. So it's really, really like just my own personal feeling. Is that I think it's good to kind of find a little bit balance. So I don't think it's a good idea to not take any time off at all. And I feel like sometimes if people say that, it actually makes me feel worse about myself. So I don't like that kind of pressure from other fellow moms. But at the same time, if you take like 4 months, then yes, like, it's true. Like, your company is you, right? In the early days, and it's really difficult. So, for the mom entrepreneurs out there, I think it's important to obviously find someone who can take care of your work, whether it's one person who is your co-founder, or it could be if you don't have a co-founder, that could be, like, say 5 people who are part of your team, to each kind of take a piece of your work. So then everyone divide and conquer the work that you usually do. But so then they can be there so you have this strong kind of, plan when you're not in the company, and your company can still run smoothly. So that's what I did that first 2 months. And then the 3rd month, I start coming back. And then I do have a co-founder, so that helps a lot. And she's really incredible. And she basically is the interim CEO when I was gone. But then when you come back, you also have, you're like, you can have like a more transitional plan. So it's not the first day you're like, I'm 100%. You kind of start from 20 to 40, and then over like the course of 2 or 3 weeks, you kind of go back to 100%.
Amazing. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I was like, is that Maxwell coming back?
Yeah.
So Siqi, one thing for YaYa, again, we work with high-powered professional women seeking community and coaching and connection. And so we launched this week YaYa Circles, which are basically group coaching circles. They're facilitated, they're topic-based, and they're with a professional coach to help kind of a small group of women talk through a personal or professional challenge area. And the most interest we saw, Siqi, was for a circle about imposter syndrome. And so I just wanted to share just something top of mind of like looking at our signups and seeing how many women, very successful women, feel a sense of imposter syndrome. I'm just curious, imposter syndrome, just for everybody watching, means when women feel like, oh, I'm faking it till I make it, but everybody else in the room knows how to do it, whether it's about being a founder or being a mom. Have you ever felt or dealt with imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I think so. Probably still dealing with it right now. So basically it's like you're doubting your ability, right? Because you feel like I'm always faking until I make it. So you doubted your ability so much that even sometimes you're no longer faking until you make it. You still feel like you are. Is that like kind of a good this definition of it?
Yeah.
I don't really understand imposters. Yeah, I think that's quite wait, no, you cannot. I have a standing desk, and then this guy is always trying to move my standing desk up and down.
Push your buttons, mentally and the physical desk buttons.
I know. So I think okay, now he's like going back to his little kingdom, trying to play with his toys. But I think this imposter syndrome is always going to be there, whether strong or mild for founders, especially female founders. So I think, and it's kind of a not very, it's a kind of sad thing to recognize, but I think as women, just biologically, we're like probably a little less. We're probably a little more insecure than our male partners, because, and then this thing like you see in like animals as well, like because like these female animals versus male animals, I think the female animals always have, and that's, I mean, this is like probably not very politically correct to say, but just look at it just as a fact, right? Like you have like male lions and female lions, and I've been like researching this lion behavior a lot because my son loves lions.
Oh.
So you have male lions who is always going like kind of outside and trying to hunt, and then you have female lions who is always trying to like protect the family, protect the kids. So I think biologically speaking, I think women, we have a higher sense of insecurity because we have to protect our family, whereas the man is always outside trying to hunt for the meat. That's like what's in animal. I think in human, like in the early, like, you know, like centuries ago, that's always the case. Now, obviously, it's very different because women, we have the power to hunt for these meat ourselves as well, which is awesome. But still, you cannot deny this biological sense of insecurity that's still embedded in your emotions, and that's just very real. I think, and partially because of this, and that's where kind of the imposter syndrome are often kind of happen more to women than men. And I talk about this sometimes with my own kind of coach and therapist, because they pointed out to my, like, you know, as a founder, like you tend to have these kind of traits. And I think as a startup founder, especially a female founder, you will probably have an even higher sense of insecurity because you're building something that is innovative, which also means that probably has not existed in the past. So you have to prove the product market fit. But the product market fit sometimes is very subjective. Like, how do you ever know whether you have product market fit? Because it's very hard to measure. So then that's when you feel like, oh, am I faking it? Does this actually work? So you constantly have these kind of self-doubt. And this self-doubt is not just from your insecurity that's embedded in you, but also whether this company, the innovative business model, the innovative approach, the product you're building, the clients that you're trying to serve, is all of this going to work? You don't know. And a lot of people don't know. And then a lot of people don't even know until you become like billion-dollar company you still don't know, right? So you're constantly going through this, I have to fake it until I make it type of cycle. And then I have to fake it until I make it cycle also evolves over time. So in the early days, you're like, oh, fake it until make it to get an investor to invest in my business. Later on, it becomes fake it until I make it to close that deal with Unilever. And then later on, it became fake it until make it to close this, like big execs from, I don't know, like Oracle, whatever. So you have like all these different stages of feeling like a fraud at work, which adds to that insecurity. So that cycle actually kind of, it becomes a vicious cycle. It actually makes it worse off potentially, and then that imposter syndrome actually could potentially accelerate over time. So it's really difficult to have a solution of it. So I think I don't have a solution. I'm not very like good at these like psychological things. But I mean, the way I've been dealing with it is just I kind of just embrace it. I tell people like, look, this is like just part of it. This is part of the journey you sign up for. And you have to just embrace the embrace the whole thing, not just the fun part of being, have this building this empire, building this amazing product, but also the less glamorous part of not knowing whether it will work. And you probably, for the longest time, you still don't know. Like today, I still don't know whether this thing will work for a long time, right? So it's, and people think it's crazy that you have all these proof points already, but no, like any day, any startup could, like even Robinhood almost failed, like when the whole GameStop thing happened, they ran out of money. So you never know, like anything could happen and that could like drive you to. And I was looking at, another thing is that I'm watching this documentary about WeWork. It's just, that's another just case study of how you have, a pretty incredible company on the surface, at least, all of a sudden became something that everyone realizes doesn't exist or doesn't have the meaning of existing, or doesn't show the same kind of sign of success. And you're like, wow, like it's fine. It's just what do you sign up for? And I know it requires a lot of mental capacity to digest that, especially when you're in it yourself. So that's why I think every founder should have a coach and a therapist.
Amazing. How do you see the difference between a coach and a therapist? What do you use your coach for, and what do you use your therapist for?
I only have one, honestly speaking. So it's kind of a blend. I don't think you need both. I think if you can have both, that's great. But if you just want to focus on one, I think that's fine. I think just someone you can, and sometimes this might not be the same person. It could be one day it could be your co-founder, one day it could be your husband, one day it could be your real therapist or coach. I think as long as someone that you feel like you can truly expose your feelings and talk about challenges and the real stuff, the vulnerabilities, right? You can show. I think that will be extremely helpful to your mental health, because as a founder, it's hard enough to build a company. So, and then being able to have the mental capacity to do all this, even when you're like in your lowest lows, it requires a huge strength, and that's what makes founders admirable.
Siqi, thank you so much for speaking so honestly and vulnerably about the self-doubt and the ambiguity, and that there's never like a plateau. It's just like, it's always going to be an uphill battle, because like every milestone you achieve is just like another one that then you're like, oh no, I'm faking it again. So just thank you for naming it. I want a transcript of this interview so I can like put your inspirational quotes on the wall. I will say you've worked, before business school at very like recognizable, prestigious brands, like was it Morgan Stanley and Bloomberg? And there's the safety and security of a brand. I think of it as this like umbrella, like I'm safe under this umbrella. And then there's like founding a company, and you're like on this desert. And I'm just curious for you, so it takes a lot of confidence and bravery to deal with that self-doubt every day in a search for product market fit and success, whatever success means. So how did you get to a place where you were confident and brave enough to say, no, I'm going to build this. I'm going to leave the brands, the safety of being under the umbrella of prestigious brands, and do my own thing?
Yeah, this is also, you asked a lot of amazing questions. I think, Jackie, I think you have this really strong, incredible ability to connect with people that is really, really admirable. And I feel like I haven't got a chance to share a lot of these things because no one really asked me that. But then because of you asking me that, this is why I think it helps me open up a lot about these things too. So really incredible questions. So I had this very, very vivid experience, right? I was working at PIMCO, which is an incredible brand in asset management. We have probably one of the best bond funds in the world. Wow. And I walked into big, I think it was JP Morgan or Morgan Stanley, I forgot even, just trying to sell this product, right? And then I remember just kind of that pitch we gave to the wealth managers trying to put our funds into one of their wealth management platforms. It was okay. It was nothing like impressive, I would say, but it was good, but it's just a mediocre pitch. And I remember that was like a couple of days later, like they were like, oh, sure, we'll add your fund. And I was just like, wow, like that feels like pretty easy, you know, you're just like, because the fund sells itself, right? So I had a very vivid experience. And this thing kind of happened a lot in different scenarios, whether it's like you're trying to give a pitch and it doesn't really matter how amazing you did that pitch because your platform that you're on is so high already. It's so prestigious. Wow. That even if your pitch sucks, well, I'm not saying that our pitch sucked. I think it actually went pretty well. But even if it sucked, it probably will be okay too. So, so when I came to startup, right, I often had these vivid memories of those moments. I was like, wow, like that was so nice. That was such a luxury. Now, if I give a pitch, if my pitch sucked, no one will ever buy into this vision or this dream with me again. So I think it adds a much higher level of requirement on the founder itself because you have nothing but yourself and your ability and your vision to sell. You are not on a platform because this platform didn't exist before. So you are the only reason that can make this platform become the future of L'Oreal, the future of Sephora type of brands again because of you. So it just like makes me realize like how much pressure is on me to sell this dream. But that's fine because that's what I signed up for. I definitely feel like tired sometimes because I'm like, oh, I kind of sometimes wish I don't have to hustle so much. Like when I was in my prestigious corporate life, when I was on such a high platform, I don't even need to try to sell that well to get my funds on a platform, you know, like, but now I have to do extra miles always to get those things that I mean, obviously the two, like work content is very different, but still it's like a same kind of hustling mindset. But I think the hope is that I think like being a hustler is always good, especially in the early days. I think gives you a very strong perspective and that's what makes you special. And that's what makes people believe in you. Yeah. But the hope is that one day once your company grows and evolves big enough, then this company now becomes that strong platform and prestigious platform that other people feel like they no longer have to beg and hustle so much to get what they want. And that is ultimately what you're trying to build, right? Because if you enable, like say the brand of HelloAva to have that kind of future power, what I had when I was working at a strong brand or strong platform, then I think that to me means much more than if I become if I work for someone else's brand and become become like an exec there. Because then you created something from scratch and then other people feel proud to be on this platform with you.
Amazing. Is there any part of your upbringing that helped prepare you for the resilience needed, I'd say, you know, to get through?
I said that because I actually think I'm like, my mom always tells me, it's like, you're like the least resilient person she knows. Like, so let me give you a little bit of background. I think this is actually a really good segue to this story. So my parents are both entrepreneurs. That is kind of, I call them the first generation of Chinese entrepreneurs that were able to ride on this amazing wave of China opening up, become the world factory of everything, everyone in the world, right? So they, when they came, they moved from the north to the south, which is where like there's a lot of exporting business, and they built their outdoor furniture business from zero. They had no money. They had no such a thing on venture investing. They put all their saving into the business. If it works out, great. If not, they're literally like on the street, right? So it's the kind of the risk that they had to take to get to where they are today. They built like, it's such an incredible business. Like our outdoor furniture products in over like 50 different countries. Like we export like, over 500 containers every season to like Australia, US, and Europe. Like, we've been doing this for the last 25 years. I'm not really involved in the family business, but I've seen them how I've been going to the factory to see how they build companies from like making those little, chairs and, tables and stuff. I went to factory since I don't even remember, like 6 years old. I've grown up in that environment, right? So, and I've seen how difficult it is for them to kind of build their vision into this amazing company that is not just, and then it's very tangible. Like what I do is not as tangible as what they do, but like I can literally touch and feel these chairs they make, and these I can see those containers of trucks that they put together. It's a very visual. So I think like when I feel like things are hard or not as smooth as I want it to be, I often remind myself, like, just think about my dad and my mom. My dad basically told himself that, like, look, if this does not succeed, and he told my mom, I would go drive a taxi. That's what he told her. And I was like, wow, like, I don't have to drive a taxi. I mean, I can at least drive an Uber.
The humility too of it. The like, I'm gonna try to pursue my dreams. And if not, there's always backup plan.
Yes, I can go back to finance. I can find a job. I can work at a Series B, post Series B startup. I have so many options. My parents didn't have any of these, right? And they put all of their savings into their business. I didn't have savings, first of all, because I put it into business school. Other people gave me money to run this. I'm so lucky. I'm in such a incredible position. Yes, I don't have a brand that's as powerful as Morgan Stanley or Bloomberg for me to ride on yet, but that's okay. Maybe after a couple of years, that could become, my brand could become like that one day.
Right now, Siqi, I'm, really early in my entrepreneurial journey, but I'm raising a friends and family round, and I'm super pregnant. And so I'm just curious, for you being a mom, how do you think about how your fundraising journey might change? And you mentioned Series B a lot. Do you expect it to be harder or just different as a mom raising a big round, or not at all?
I don't think it will be hard for a mom to raise a round unless you feel physically tired of it, like from your own kind of health concerns. If they're investors because they're looking at you, they're like, oh, you're so pregnant, like I worry that you're not going to be able to put as much effort, then they're not your investors. These are people, you can tell them like, you're not good enough to be part of this journey, and just like they are not worth it. But that being said, I do think if you're tired of it, or you feel like so tired because you are going through this pregnancy journey, maybe just be a little mindful about your schedule and don't schedule too many meetings in one day, and try to spread them up a little bit. Be more empathetic about, like, more self-compassion. I think that's the word I'm looking for. I think if you have a choice to avoid fundraising during pregnancy, that's always good. But then a lot of the time, like, you hear so many stories of female founder having to do with fundraising during pregnancy or even right after birth. That's just, sometimes things cannot wait, and if you need the money, you need the money to do it. So, but if you can kind of plan in a way that can try to avoid, like, at least the last trimester trying to raise money, I think that's probably more, I would usually recommend that. But If not, it's not a big deal. It's less so from the investor's perspective, because what they think does not matter. If they have judgment over this, then they're not your investor. It's more for like kind of the health concerns and benefits for the mom herself.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Siqi, I've been wondering, one reason I started this is because I wanted to create a space for us to talk about the hard things. And you've talked about so many hard things about entrepreneurship and motherhood. Are there other topics that you think go unsaid that like moms don't talk about, or that you don't tell an expecting mom, before, people say, oh, here's my advice for a registry. Cool. Like, I want to know what products were useful to you, but I also want to know like other things that were hard. Any other pieces of advice? Are there just topic areas that you feel like nobody told you about? Were there any surprises for you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of practical stuff that is not being talked about enough. And I kind of wish that I had more advice, because those are things that's very easily could be action on. Yeah. And you do it like if you know it, but I just didn't know. Like, for example, like breastfeeding techniques, right? Like, how do you breastfeeding while you work? Like, what kind of consultant you can potentially get for that, and what kind of food to eat like the first couple months postpartum. These are all things that are pretty, I would say, pretty easy to action on, but like, because you don't know what you don't know, and sometimes people just don't pay attention enough to it, but these actually could make a pretty big difference into the well-being of yourself. Like I was telling you to drink raspberry leaf tea and evening primrose oil, right? These are things, if I didn't take that hypnobirthing class, I would have never known. And no one would ever told me, because they probably also didn't know. So those are actually really like practical things. I feel like it's so easy to execute on, especially if you're an entrepreneur. You literally like probably like hand up this call and then you go buy those supplements yourself. But like, I feel like those things, I wish there was more education around it. And then it's not just like, maybe like for moms to pass along their shopping list or something to the next. And then like, there's one thing I found really useful is I got this mama tips from Laura in our class.
Yes.
I don't know if she sent it to you. If not, I will send it to you because it's very useful. And I was just like, wow, like I wish every mom has this to share with your moms. And that was just, because a lot of times, like, you can ask questions if you feel like that's an area you don't know, but you don't know what you don't know. There are a lot of areas that you probably would never even think about unless someone puts it out there for you.
Amazing. Yeah, I got Laurelyn's Google Doc, and I feel like everybody should add. But at some point too, it's like, at some point you just have to go with your own instincts. And I think that can be hard. There are great, and sometimes people are strong on their camp, but there's, you're just not sure whose camp to choose on, like sleep training or breastfeeding and all of those things.
Yeah, exactly. I think one thing I learned as a founder, and this kind of applies to my journey as a mom too, is to keep a very open mind. So, because as a founder, when you're building products, right, you can never like be so betting on one thing and then you're like, this will definitely work. Let me like invest huge amount of money into this, and then if it doesn't work, then my company fails. That's always a stupid way to run a company, because what if it doesn't work? Then you're like dead, right? So I think as a founder, you always want to kind of keep your different avenues open. If something doesn't work, you immediately kind of tweak a little bit, try something else, because these are what kind of makes successful companies. And you have to go through a few trial and errors to find that sweet spot. And then once you find that sweet spot, you're like, wow, this is cool, like it's working. As a mom, it's kind of a little bit of the same. Your baby cannot talk to you for a long time until they're like 2 years old at least, right? So a lot of the early journeys, you're kind of doing trial and errors with them. You're trying to kind of test it out, like what works and what doesn't. And that's like similar to building a startup. You want to see the reaction of your kids. And a lot of these are unknowns because they cannot talk to you yet. So it's a little bit of a guessing and then trying to figure it out. And that's part of what makes it a little overwhelming and stressful, but also part of the fun, the fulfillment of this whole journey.
I love it. I can see how both, like being a founder helps you get more comfortable with ambiguity and testing. Like, like, hey, I don't have this figured out. I'm just going to test and see what happens, get feedback. Sometimes though, a kid doesn't give you feedback except crying. So you're crying.
But they will cry. So then you will know, like, probably doesn't work. And then and then you try something else. They're like, oh, they're smiling. Then you're like, oh, wow, this makes him very happy. That's great. So experiences matter, but every kid is different. Like even, and sometimes every caregiver is different. Like what works for me sometimes doesn't work well for my nanny, doesn't work well for my husband. So you kind of figure out what's your sweet spot, and you kind of double down on those sweet spots.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Siqi, for me, motherhood is like this black curtain where it's like, here's my life before, and I have no idea what's behind the curtain. Can you just tell me what like a day in your life is like? Like, I know every day is different, I'm sure, but like, what time do you wake up? What, like, I don't know what I'm very in the weeds person. So what does it look like?
May I ask you how many months are you now?
Yes, I'm at 34 weeks. So 7 months.
Oh, you're just 2 weeks away from drinking raspberry leaf tea.
Okay, great. I didn't know what week I should start.
Yeah, 36 weeks, because you don't want to start too early, because I think it's like there's a little bit of, you don't want like to soften the cervix too early also. Anyway, so yeah, the kind of the daily agenda. So this is very different when I was breastfeeding versus not. So now obviously I no longer breastfeed because my son is 13 months. I breastfed till till he was 8 months old. So, and my goal was like 6 months. So I kind of surpassed that a little bit. I was very happy. I was like, yay. Like, and then next kid, I'm not going to give myself even a goal at all, because I feel like that's stupid. Mm-hmm. So I would say, like, when I was breastfeeding, I would wake up every day around 6 o'clock, and I'm trying to like snooze a little bit, and then usually my nanny will take care of him, like to have some water and some milk, some water and some food, and then at 8 o'clock I will breastfeed him. So like that was my old breastfeeding days, and every 4 hours I will breastfeed him. Yeah. So then my day is kind of structured around his eating schedule, and sometimes I'm too busy, I have to do a very important call, then I will tell my nanny or husband, like back then they're still working from home, so I would tell my husband to feed him at this hours, and everyone's like worked on a very good schedule, because like he has to get feeding every 4 hours, and then in between that we have to like play with him, and also, I mean, most of the time like nanny plays with him, but then he also has to go to like outdoors and all that stuff, right? So now I no longer have to do that, which is kind of nice. So I usually wake up around 6:30 or 7. Like now I'm trying to train him to wake up around 7 so that he doesn't wake up too early, because I want to sleep till at least 7:30. So I train him to wake up at 7:30, and I will take him out of his crib, and I would and the nanny will change the diaper and everything, and I will try to feed him a little bit in the morning. If I cannot feed him, the nanny will feed him, and then I will kind of do my morning roadshow. I will go do a Peloton exercise maybe around 8 o'clock or 8:30, and that's when my nanny will take care of him. Like usually he's done with breakfast at this point, so my nanny will play with him, or sometimes they will come down and see me doing Peloton, which is really cute. Because I don't have a Peloton at home, we have it in the gym in the building. So I'll do the Peloton, and after that I will usually like shower, and then by 9 o'clock I'm like ready to work, and I'm like eating my breakfast at my desk and also my coffee, and then I'm feeling very energized as well, because after the workout, and then starting from 9 o'clock to like 9:30 is where I will do some emails from the night before, and then I will have our morning meeting either at 9:30 or 10. Sometimes we have our morning meeting at 10, sometimes we have a morning meeting at 9:30, so it depends on the day. And then from 10 to 12 is kind of like a pretty intense work time. And then I will see Maxwell kind of like on the background, and sometimes I will like interact with him a little bit if we're not in the middle of the meeting. And then we'll eat lunch, and I will try to feed him lunch actually during lunchtime, because I actually really enjoy that intimate time with him. So I was trying to spend no more than 30 minutes feeding him lunch. If it's anything more than 30 minutes, I will pass it on to the nanny. And then in the afternoon, I will usually have my kind of focus like time, and I will still kind of see him in the app, like in the background playing and stuff. And especially if I have meetings, I will usually, if it's an important meeting, that is, I absolutely cannot have him hijacking my Zoom calls, then I will tell my nanny to take him out for a walk. And then they will usually go to like, I have a membership at this play garden thing, which is an indoor playground that they will go from 4 to 5. And then my duty comes when it's 5:30. Then I will get off whatever I'm doing. I will get off and then start doing bath, reading, and then start like the nighttime ritual. So by like 7:30, usually he's in bed. And then we eat dinner around 8 o'clock. And then so the rest of the night we're free, and I can work on more stuff if I want to. So that's kind of like my day.
I love it. And what do you and your husband, is he work as hard as you do so that you just work together in the evenings, or sometimes you take it easy and watch a show? How do you think about it?
No, I don't think we ever have time to actually sit down and watch a show unless it's on the weekends. Yeah, I think evening time we usually work a little bit. If it's not work, I would probably sometimes I would browse some news, but those news are usually not like serious news. It's usually like entertainment news type of thing.
Yeah, you have to turn off your brain sometimes, and engage in a different way. Well,
I sometimes do a little bit of reading too, but most of the reading I've been doing these days are related to parenting. So it's not so much on like kind of my own pleasure reading anymore, like a novel. I don't usually have time for that anymore. I wish I do. Like for now, I just I read books around like parenting or Montessori education, and I have this book which I highly recommend. Let me see if I have it. It's called I don't know actually. No, I don't. It's not in front of me, but it's called Whole Brain Child. And then there's another one called yeah, it's related to some philosophy about parenting, which obviously I'm not taking it 100% because as you said, right, like there's different approaches to everything.
Right.
There's some elements of it that's useful and it's relatively easier to adopt, which I would love to obviously trying to use when I'm raising him later on. I mean, these kind of things, honestly, it's very hard to execute on right now because he's too young. But I think later on it would be very useful.
Amazing. I'm not good at like sitting down with nonfiction, but I'm trying to listen to more audiobooks, like while walking the dog or while cooking or cleaning. But Siqi, I know it's already after 4:30 your time. You have given me so much. And I want to make sure, I just want to thank you for being so honest. What?
I said, of course, I'm so honored. I'm sorry. I'm looking up this book for you because
I already wrote down the Whole Brain Child. Definitely going to do it.
Yeah, the Whole Brain Child. And then it's on my Audible because you mentioned you like to listen to book. So it's this book called A Montessori Toddler, which is here. Let me show you. Oh,
great. Yeah, I love it seeing the cover.
Yeah, so this is a book I've been listening right now, and I quite enjoy it. I like the fact that it's not super dry, because I hate those books that are like just telling you like what to do, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm falling asleep.
Yeah,
like this kind of book
when you're interesting, put me to sleep.
Yeah. Oh, and another quick tips is that when you're breastfeeding, whether you're putting your baby on your boobs or when you're pumping, you actually have a lot of free time. Because the baby, like in the early days, like when you're breastfeeding him or her, they usually fall asleep on your boobs. So you're like actually have all these free time. So you can totally leverage those time to listen to some audiobook, or you probably won't be able to read because it's like you're trying to hold him, or you have like all these wires trying to, pump, but you can definitely, I think what you suggest really good idea, just like listen to the books. So definitely for new moms or people who are pregnant like yourself, definitely trying to download a few of these books so then you have it ready when you're breastfeeding and you're like can like absorb so much information.
Well, thank you, Siqi, for being my YaYa. A YaYa is someone who's been there, done that, and can give you support and coach you. So thank you for coaching me. Our website is joinyaya.com. We've been so lucky to talk with Siqi, the CEO and co-founder of HelloAva. Highly recommended to they use cool technology to help create a customized skincare routine for you. Thank you, Siqi, so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us. And I'm so honored